Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. No, I mean, honestly, can you still sometimes, as deep as you're in it, believe that some ridiculous reality show host has, been able to appoint judges that we will be dealing with this effery forever, right?
Yeah, for the rest of our lives, over 200 judges, lifetime appointments. And that guy, that she was just speaking of, Matthew Kacsmaryk or whatever, he obviously has some vendetta against women. I read an article about what he and his wife were like doing, with their Roe v. Wade sort of activism. And you don't need activist judges, right? You don't need this sort of as we discussed in the last segment, Harlan Crow funding all this stuff, right? So there's a lot of money in this sort of institutionalized misogyny and attacks on women. And it's clearly hypocritical, right? It's clearly hypocrisy in every way. These guys participate in reproductive freedoms. If one of those senators gets his intern pregnant, she's probably going to get an abortion. You know what I mean? Donald Trump has certainly paid for abortions, So it's insane. Yeah. And I never thought I'd see it, to answer your question.
Wonder if that's going to come out at some point, because that's true.
At some point it probably will.
Yeah. I mean, I knew the story 10 years ago, the one that was referenced in the indictment last thing. That was not a secret at all. None of this stuff was a secret is the point I'm trying to make. It's just powerful people didn't want to tell you the truth because there was more money in keeping quiet.
Yeah. By the way, you speaking of just effery on the state level, you tweeted Texas politicians like Governor Abbott and his criminal Texas AG Ken Paxton celebrating Easter by upholding the God-given right to murder people. Most of the folks posing as Christians today would have been the first in line to crucify Christ. And you just said Jesus wouldn't have lasted 10 minutes in Texas. Oh, my God, so true.
Right. Long-haired dude in sandals. Middle Eastern looking, it would have been all over. And that was aimed at Ken Paxton and Governor Abbott, Ken Paxton being the AG. Yeah. The night before Easter, they're tweeting about how they're going to pardon this guy instantly. A guy who went out and committed murder, who said he was going to on his Facebook page and then did. And I think the underlying message there, since these people killed he killed a white protester who was sympathetic to Black Lives Matter, as did Kyle Rittenhouse. I think the overarching message is, hey, even the white folks that side with these woke people will not receive our protections. And I'll just say both of those guys the next morning tweeted, he has risen. Happy Easter.
Right.
What?
Yes. Oh, here is the statement from the bassinet of the 45th president that I mentioned earlier. Slovenly and pathetic Bill Barr, our coward former AG, was on ABC Fake News this weekend making statements that he knows nothing about. He has long since gone from the White House. I wanted him out. Concerning the boxes, continuation of Russia, Ukraine, the Mueller witch hunt, and more. While he correctly puts down the NYDA case, he plays up the equally ridiculous boxes hoax, where Biden should have the problem, not me. Barr's a weak and angry rhino. Okay, so let's break down. First of all, starting with slovenly.
Right.
He's calling someone else. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way that is in his vocabulary. No way. And he avoids three-syllable words like the plague.
But honestly, Bill Barr, who obviously protected him and persecuted his enemies for years, is, not Trumpy enough now.
Right. Who created the Trump hoax, right? The whole Russia hoax, rather, what Trump would say, right? He would say, it's the Russia hoax. That was Trump's tagline, and nobody allowed that to circulate in the American public more than Bill Barr when he sat on the Mueller report, misrepresented it originally, and then we didn't get to see it for 6 weeks, and the Russia hoax circulated. So that's typical Trump. He'll use you, and then he'll turn on you. He's done that to every person in his orbit.
What do you think is up, speaking on about that, with Alan Weisselberg?
Weisselberg will not flip on Trump. I know people have always been saying he would flip on him. There is no way. Weisselberg is like a mob accountant. Okay. Yeah. He'd rather deal with 6 months in Rikers than he would with the boys on Long Island that are going to talk to him if he flips on Trump. He's not going to flip on Trump. I could be wrong, but I don't ever see that happening.
Wow. Wow. It really is still some days amazing. It's magical to still be surprised that we have such a criminal mobby president. Had
Yeah.
yes, criminal mobby president. Karen in Chicago, you're on with Noel. Hello.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for taking my call with such a big name on.
Right.
Noel, thank you so much for validating all of us, because we would be thinking that we're the crazy ones, just like with everything going on. But I want to say, if Jesus was around, they would be crucifying him because he's too woke.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear. And, with everything that we're seeing with the judicial system, the legal system, with, how Trump has been treated with all this deference, the weaponization of the courts against women, and then seeing this corruption with the conservatives on the Supreme Court, we have got to reach out to voters and really impress upon them. And you guys are my constitutional scholars this morning. What is it going to take for us to take the majority? How big of a majority do we have to have in Congress in order to expand the court? Because that is what we need. Because then all of those lifetime appointments become less of an issue for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
No, I keep saying that I think one of the silver linings of all this is how activated they are making the young voters. I mean, what's happening with the Tennessee 3, and now, Karen, these rulings this weekend, women. I mean, if you thought women were pissed before, right?
Yep, absolutely. No, I mean, and listen, I'm just going to say this is a little personal anecdote. I'm calling in now late because I was in court with my sister who's being stalked.
Right.
And basically this guy lawyered up. My sister goes in there because she's not thinking she needs an attorney. Women, we are not protected. People of color, we're not protected by the current system. And it really, at the micro level, in the person, when you experience it personally, it really does enrage. I'm like, I walked out of there and I was completely enraged.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, it was like, you have to prove your case. They're not, it's all like she has documented evidence and they told her that it's hearsay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wouldn't accept it.
Well,
I mean,
and
this
that's
is
why
the problem.
Yeah, it's part of why, I feel like Trump has got to go to jail, because there is like our faith in our justice system, just down the level, even Karen, that you're talking about, and just all the way up to the top. I mean, we do. I think people really, really want to feel like we have a system of of justice where no one is above the law. I mean, what is your take on? Were you surprised that he actually was finally indicted for the first time? Because there's people that were like, "Oh, nothing's ever going to happen to him." Right?
Yeah, I was very much surprised. Thank you for your kind words, Karen. And what you said, Stephanie, is absolutely correct. The symbol of justice is a lady with a sword and scales in her hand, right? Mm-hmm. Those scales are meant to be in balance, and now they're out of balance, right? Because the bad guys are winning, and they're winning by manipulating the worst instincts in their demographic: a lack of empathy, brutality, misogyny, racism, all these things that were sort of kitchen table, topics, as Raphael Warnock said at the top of your show so brilliantly. They've become mainstream. That's what MAGA is. It's allowing people to sort of like be public with their racism and their brutality.
I just read a tweet.
And it becomes a dynamic that you have to battle the instincts. It's an instinctual cultural thing. There's nothing wrong with being kind. If somebody is different than you in their lifestyle, that's an opportunity for you to expand your heart, for you to become a better person and to know more than you were born into this life with. But they want to homogenize everything into this myth of sort of white male, Christian fascism. And that's even illusion, because all they're really trying to do is make a buck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
it's all billionaires trying to get a tax break. They don't care about
to your point, no, I read a tweet earlier about someone saying they grew up in the South and they thought racism, things had gotten better. But, Donald Trump didn't invent racism. He just was saying he's just enabled people to feel like it's okay again. It's okay to say all these horrific things because, everyone feels the same way you do, right? I mean, what's the thing about Trump? Oh, he just says what I'm thinking, right?
Exactly.
Says people who don't think, right?
Exactly. I mean, I grew up with these kids. I'm 52, right? Yeah. You know, it was always sort of there. The demographic he appeals to are a lot of the people who fled to the suburbs in the 60s and 70s, you know, middle class, working class, often, you know, immigrants themselves, 1 or 2 generations removed. And they brought with them a lot of that xenophobia, right? A lot of that sort of innate racism. And instead of, and that happens, right? And usually cultural stuff, you know, will temper that, right? People will outgrow that. Trump came, and before Trump, Fox News, right? Fox News really laid the groundwork. And then Fox came along and said, it's okay to be this way. Get on the Trump train. And they did. You know?
Well, I was saying in Tennessee, just naked racism, that they just went, okay, not the white lady, but the 2 black kids, you know, and
Republicans say they won't cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. But can honest, hard-working middle-class Americans really believe what these politicians say? Republicans said they wouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade. Here's what Supreme Court Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett said during their Senate confirmation hearings.
Roe v. Wade. It is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. A good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court.
Roe v. Wade. It's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court.
Roe is not a super precedent, but that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled.
Well, we saw how that turned out. They played us for fools. Tell your elected officials to keep their hands off of our Social Security and health care benefits.